I want to thank William Patrick Patterson for doing this tonight. We've had this is our 11th week. It's now Wednesday of this week, and still coming up tomorrow we have Svet Jacqueline, and on Friday we have Wolfgang Schwein and Katria Tomko presenting. I thank our sponsors who are Photo Shelter, Epson, Pro Photo Daily Archive, and American Photography. Want to wish everyone a happy New Year. And as I've been mentioning all week, I'm trying to put together a week similar to this on the Israeli-Palestinian issue. So if anyone has any contacts there, especially for people who are in Gaza and the West Bank, please reach out to me and let me know. And without further ado, I give you William Patrick Patterson.
Jay, thank you, Frank, for having me back. I appreciate this opportunity to amplify the voices from Ukraine, especially more now than ever. I think that this conversation is important due to the lack of funding that's happening within our Congress and Senate in DC. My name is Patrick Patterson. Long story short, going back to William Patrick Patterson, Frank and I were talking about that. My domain name was stolen many years ago by a professional NBA basketball player. So I'm not willing to spend the $10,000 to purchase it back. So that's where the confusion comes with William Patrick. It's short and easy. But I'm from Southeast Texas originally, a small town called Beaumont outside of Houston. And it was there my early childhood experiences that moved me to explore themes of prejudice, human agency, displacement, and loss through my lens. My earlier work is a representation of Texas death row, immigration on the Texas-Mexico border, and as well in the Midwest. And March of 2022, I made the decision to travel to the Poland-Ukraine border for my first European trip, my first time to document a war, anything of this magnitude. So I'm independent, self-funded. All the logistics and everything that I put together is a combination of research and networking to kind of put it all together. I have a book that's in the works. The title of that book is Jiti, which translates into to live. I usually begin each of my lectures with a quote. Young Joseph stood upon a mirage of golden wheat, and he's saying, "We will live, we will live." The following day, Joseph shared some of his final words with his sister. Everything dies. This is Soviet Ukraine in 1933. This is the Holodomor, Stalin's man-made famine, where more than 4 million Ukrainians were starved to death. Nearly 750,000 more fell victim to the bullet. This image is of Galina. Galina is also a survivor of Holodomor. She is a survivor of Nazi occupation, a second famine following Second World War. And in 2022, she watched Russian tanks roll through her village field behind her home. This is a woman that has experienced a lifetime of trauma and of war. And today, we have new Galinas being born throughout Ukraine. This young child is from Eastern Ukraine, and her family lineage ties back to Holodomor, where her great-great-grandmother lost 3 of her children, 2 of them surviving, one of those surviving by being put on a train west to Western Ukraine. When her great-great-grandmother passed away, they still found cookies and food sewn into pillows and hidden throughout the home.
Wow.
So this generational trauma is still with Ukrainians today, and there are still those who have lived this throughout their entire lives, going back to Holodomor.
Patrick, give us a little sense. How many times have you been back and how long have you been there?
I've spent, I was on I left in March, first week of March, and spent more than almost 3 weeks at the Poland-Ukraine border. Returned back to the United States, and I made the decision to move to Ukraine um, in early June. So in total, almost spending 14 months there.
And what was the decision-making process to move there from someone who hadn't done it before to now totally engaged in that way?
I think my experience at the border that first week of March was so overwhelming and raw. There's no way to return from that experience without one, wanting to learn more about the why. Why is this happening? And two, going back to what's kind of always motivated me, um, exploring these themes of displacement and human agency and loss. So um, it's one of the largest refugee crises since the Second World War. Um, so I knew that I needed to go back, and I didn't want to put a timestamp on how long I would stay. So for me, that allows me uh, to work organically, and as long as I need, until I feel like I have at least a body of work completed.
Okay. And do you plan on going back?
I have no plans set at the moment, no specific dates, but of course, every day I wake up trying to wrestle
Mm.
those emotions and feelings. So there's plans, but nothing definitive. When I arrived at the Medica border crossing, the Poland-Ukraine border, more than 120,000 Ukrainians had crossed at the Medica border crossing in that one day. That one border crossing, it's 120,000 human beings crossing over. This image is of a mother holding her young child on a transport bus in the middle of the night in Przemyśl, going to a refugee center. And war does not discriminate. Children traveled alone, as young as this girl here, put on a train and sent west. This is Anna on the right and her friend Svetlana and their 3 children. They traveled from the Kyiv region in eastern Ukraine and arrived at Medica exhausted, pushing 2 shopping carts, toting 2 dogs with their belongings in their cart, and little baby Lisa also in the shopping cart. And this was the first time that we made the decision that we would participate and put our cameras down. And we chose to drive them from the border to Warsaw to a family that Svetlana had there. And this is somewhere on a rural highway in Poland. I look back and the car is quiet. The dogs stopped whimpering, the windows stopped, they became unfogged, and the children slept. And so this was the first time that I would come to realize and learn that this is the first time that these 2 women had slept in more than 2 days. And while I'm driving down the highway, I managed to guess on how far they were and set my lens to that and turn my camera around and make this photograph. And so, as imperfect as this image is compositionally, war is imperfect. Humanity is imperfect. But for me, out of most of the images that I've taken from Ukraine, this one has a special place in me. And every day the warriors go to the front lines to protect their families and their country. And it's not just trained professional military personnel. Ukraine, as we learned this week, lost a great poet. Actors, artists have all put down their instruments and traveled to East to fight for their country and to fight for freedom. This is Anne. I joined Anne at the morgue to pick up her husband's body. Her husband Oleg was one of Ukraine's premier filmmakers. He produced many of President Zelensky's films. Anne, in her own right, is a very well-known Ukrainian actress. Oleg was killed shortly before Christmas in Bakhmut in 2022. And behind Oleg's casket is his battalion that left the east in the front to put him to rest. It seems like almost every day there's a new funeral in Maidan in the central square of Kyiv. This is Da Vinci. He was Ukraine's youngest battalion commanders in Ukrainian history. He was killed on March 7th, 2023, also in Bakhmut. And this is a young cadet that is preparing to unload Da Vinci's body. Da Vinci was also awarded the Hero Award, which is Ukraine's highest honor. When I look at this image, it's just this one kid that's looking down at Da Vinci, and I at least think that it's almost a reflection in a mirror of what could be, right? The possibilities, coming to understanding mortality and death. Behind Da Vinci's casket here is Da Vinci's mother, who's being treated by paramedics after passing out during his service. And when there are no longer people to share their stories of war, we're left with the artifacts of war. And these very artifacts tell their own unique story. This is a portrait that had fallen off a bookcase in a woman's home in Izum after a Russian bomb dropped a delayed detonation bomb on their residential building. This is an abandoned church that was used as a Russian field hospital outside of Izum. And one of the things that really pulls me into this image is that there's a loss of time here. For me, this is an image that could be from the Second World War. There's a couple items that sit in this image that help explain that it's not. But the mattress, the stripes, the textures in this room. This is in Kharkiv region, just north of Kharkiv at a high school. And this would be equivalent to a locker room in a US school. And these shoes and these kids' backpacks still sit in the exact spot they sat the day before Russian soldiers invaded Kharkiv. In this room, in some of these shoes, there are small mines that have been left behind by Russian soldiers. And when I look at this image, I think about each of these shoes represents a person that we will never know if they are still with us. Literally, this is time standing still from invasion. This is also in Kharkiv. This is a bedroom of a residence where the people in this particular home were killed. And when I kept walking through this bedroom in this apartment, I kept noticing the child on the wall. These eyes kept following me throughout my time there. The time on the clock has now stopped. The floor, what you can't see, is rippled like a wave from the impact of the bomb. But I like to pay close attention to what's been left behind. And I think that in the realm of covering conflict and war, uh, these images are important, and they are so different than the images that we see from the front lines of the big guns and the flames and the explosions. I really wanted to personalize and to really focus on those who are impacted by war and not war itself.
So Patrick, I mean, listening to you now, I mean, after, because I know you were with us a while back, something profound has happened here for you in this documentation of these people and their memories. Can you speak to that a little bit? What, the metamorphosis for you in an emotional way?
I mean, for me, for one, I feel a great responsibility to um, share these stories. I carry them with me every day, and my hope is that just enough will stay inside my soul, and I can let some of these live independently of me. Um, it's changed me as a person. I think it's impossible for it not to.
Mm.
Um, I'm not from Ukraine. I'm not Ukrainian. Um, as of today, I will never know what it feels like to have my home bombed or taken. Um, I've never been displaced. Um, I've experienced war, just as uh, so many Ukrainians have. My home in Ukraine was very close to being hit. Windows blown out. But it's different. I'm not. This is not my home.
Mm.
Th- This this is these are these people's homes. This is their life, and um, I can get on a plane and leave. I can get on a train and leave. For many of these people, they can't. Where are they going to go? So I think that I reflect on that a lot. I've seen a lot of death in my life. It's So while that impacts me, I feel like I can emotionally handle that aspect of it. Um, it's these personal um, connections that I've created through personal artifacts that um, you know I know that this glove belonged to a Russian soldier who was killed in the Cherniv region, and his tank is sitting just a few meters behind this glove in the field, and you can see the holes from the shrapnel in the glove. Um, so I think about the people who are impacted by the decisions from um, governments to invade and create such destruction. I'm not sure if that answers your question.
Yeah, no, it does in a profound way. It just listening to you and how you're digesting all this. is incredibly compelling.
This is in Izum. This is also in an apartment um, that belonged, or I'll talk about a man named Misha shortly. This is one of his neighbors, and as you can see, uh, the counter has been removed from the wall, and there's no longer a kitchen sink, and the sink has been stolen and removed. Um, there is still food in this pot that has cooked so many pots of borscht and fed so many people over the years. So I think about the connection that not only to this family but to culture, to um, what this image means to Ukrainians, right? I know that there are so many Ukrainians that look at this, and the first thing they say is that my mom has that same wallpaper in her kitchen. My grandmother had this same pot that she cooked out of. Um, I see the symbolism in the sunflowers on the mat on the countertop, and I think about how many loaves of bread have been cut on this cutting block. And then I always go back deeper and think about the symbolism and the significance of bread. Um, when you come into a recently liberated village, it's the first thing that people want. It's the first thing that people are asking for, and that is deeply rooted in the history of Holodomor and Stalin man-made famine. So when I look at this, somebody may look at this image and just say, "There's a pot," and it's nice lighting, um, but there's so much going on here,
Mm.
and there's so much to tell. And unfortunately, the person who lived in this apartment is no longer with us to share their story. So I want to explore more using metaphors and allegory and journalism, especially within photographing war and conflict. I think we're inundated with images of, compositionally great, lighting's great, but what's in the image is what's in the image. It's a tank firing around. It's someone carrying a dead body. I want the viewer to think, and I want the viewer to, um, in some aspects, have to be educated to create their own story in their mind of what this could be and what this means.
And Patrick, were you this sensitive, before, or were you this inquisitive before you went and covered this conflict? Or is this
I've always
something?
been sensitive.
What's that?
I've always been sensitive.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
my nickname in Ukraine was the sensitive Texas bluebonnet.
sensitive, sensitive.
Sensitive Texas bluebonnet.
Okay, and who gave you that?
Um, I believe my fixer.
Okay. And so did this come, like, what came first, the chicken or the egg?
I mean, this goes back to my upbringing, right? I grew up
okay,
in an area where every day I would see Black women standing at bus stops at the end of the day, waiting to catch their ride home after working all day in the homes of an elite white community.
that's in Beaumont?
That's in Beaumont, yeah.
Okay,
Um,
Beaumont, Texas.
I was uh, partially raised by a Black woman that worked for my family. Um, and she was always said to be part of our family, but always excluded from many of the personal, intimate gatherings. Um, she, my parents certainly loved her, but um, she wasn't family. She was family to me.
Right.
And to this date, I have an amazing, unique relationship with her that we we have these discussions and the impact that she had on me growing up. And it's also, um, you know, some of these experiences, I think, have a lot to do with me exploring the themes of human agency and prejudice and displacement and loss. So I always would look at these situations and understand that something wasn't right. Um, and so, uh, yeah.
Okay. Continue.
Um, this is also an Zoom. This is a door to a garage, and I love that it's so abstract and but yet uh, in context with other images, um, we all understand what these are. If anyone doesn't, they are from munitions hitting from rounds hitting the metal. Um, but it gives a sense of feel and closeness to what happens to um, when we think of steel, it's strong, it's durable, it's and just to see the impressions that this has on that material, these also hit flesh, right? These also rip through bodies every single day. Children, mothers, grandparents. And the responsibility of art within war. I think there's a great responsibility for artists during wartime with propaganda. And I just love this little kid, flipping Putin on his back. This is in Boryanka. It's one of Banksy's murals that he has created. This is also in Boryanka. And it was interesting what this actually did in these communities. It did two things. Um, it drew a lot of attention to areas that were hard hit, that needed attention and exposure for the world to see. But it was at the sacrifice of those who still live within these communities. And what was happening is that people from Poland and people from Kyiv, the big cities, would travel to the smaller towns and villages to look at Banksy's murals. And so it was, in essence, as though these people traveling from Kyiv were walking into a museum and um, doing their selfies in front of these pictures, the murals, but yet not bringing any humanitarian aid into these communities, not stopping and exploring what had happened to these communities. So for those who still live in Boryanka and in Izum, it drove a lot of, I want to say voyeurism, but people felt taken advantage of who lived under occupation and then had so many people traveling to their town or their city to look at murals that were painted. So it's just understanding of that it's more than just a Banksy mural. It's the impact that these murals have. It serves one purpose, but there's also a cost to that. And then there are those living within Ukraine that experience no air sirens or experience very little impact of war. This is a young girl in the Transcarpathian Mountains in the middle of nowhere. This was my respite. This is where I would go when I needed a break from bombs and missiles and drones. And so she's sitting next to her father, who's driving me to my small little tree house in the middle of the mountains. Um, he was
And
also a soldier, a volunteer soldier who fought in Bucha and Irpin. So uh, he now spends his time as an outdoor guide and mountaineer. So he has this beautiful property in the Transcarpathian. He lives there with his wife and two children, and has a small little farm. And um, they escape the air raid sirens. It's one of the few places that you won't hear a siren.
Patrick, how do you know when you need a break, when you
Mm.
need to get back to the wilderness? What are the telltale signs for you?
Um, maybe some. It could be that I don't have a developing story that um, you know, for 2 weeks, and I want to go there to kind of realign and reevaluate what I'm doing, work on my writing, try to figure out where I want to go, my next steps. Um, I really never felt that I needed to leave until the month of May, and May was really hard. Um, while I've been in many missile attacks and drone attacks in the east, uh, artillery attacks. Uh, there's something very different when those come to your home. You can't escape it. It's where you live. And for the month of May, I had missiles and drones um, trying to target a Patriot air defense that was very close to my home. And so that brought um, I think there was 5 nights in the entire month of May that I didn't have missiles and drones literally blowing up over my home. So windows blown out. I slept very little in the month of May, maybe 1 to 2 hours a day. I went from being able to stand on my balcony and uh, film what was happening going on with drone attacks to sleeping with my clothes on and trying to um, predict when the next attack was going to come. And you can kind of do that with drones. And you can do that with the launch of the Tu-95 planes. So you can have some type of, you can kind of figure that out. So you can't figure out the hypersonic missiles because those sometimes hit and then the sirens go off. So my body was completely out of whack in the month of May. I had a panic attack in the Kyiv subway, sat down next to the turnstile, and an amazing Ukrainian police officer. She moved me to their office, and um, a firefighter, and in Ukraine, every ambulance has an equivalent of a PA, a physician assistant with them. And so the next thing I know, I'm taking some type of tranquilizer, and I have no idea what it is. And there's no one that speaks English. And uh, so that's when I know that I need to have a break. And I did. I left shortly after that. I left in June 7th.
Yeah, that has to be pretty scary to be in a foreign place, taking some type of pill and not having, all the comforts or anyone to just talk to, right? I mean, that
Sure.
that that's got to be tough for you. So, and do you feel that's an ongoing issue for you as you move
I,
forward?
I certainly am experiencing PTSD for sure.
You are, okay. And
And this is the Ukraine that's this is the Carpathians. It's untouched by Russia for the most part. For those who are lucky enough, and you can find them, Ukrainians are able to escape and get respite. And sometimes I hear people in the United States criticizing people who are out skiing or vacationing. And I don't think they understand that just because it's a war doesn't mean that you don't need a break. And if you can get a break, you need to take it. And um, and this area was flooded with children, which was great. And then there are those who are less fortunate. This is Misha. Um, Misha lives in Izum, grew up in Izum, and this is Misha sitting in front of his home. On March 8th, a delayed detonation bomb was dropped by a Russian fixed-wing aircraft, and that that bomb traveled through the center of this apartment block, splitting the building in half. This is a view of this building, only connected now by one metal wire connecting them. On March 1st, Misha relocated his family to the basement, along with 54 other residents of his building. Misha is an electrician, so he chose the electrical room to set up his wife, his daughter, son-in-law, his aunt, and 3 grandchildren, ages 3, 9, and 11. Misha woke up on March 8th, walked up to his second floor balcony, and he prepared porridge. After the family ate in the basement, Misha's 3-year-old granddaughter, Irina, asked him for tea. And as any grandfather would say, absolutely. So shortly before 9 a.m., Misha stepped outside of the basement into the stairwell on the bottom basement floor. And his wife said, Misha, wait, I will go with you. They had been married for 41 years. As she put on her second boot, Misha recalled looking up, and his wife was looking at Misha, and the bomb hit. Misha woke 6 hours later, partially covered by debris. And after he removed himself, he realized that he had lost all 7 members of his family. This is a view from Misha's neighbor's flat, overlooks the soccer field. In the distance, next to the church, is also a school. Misha's apartment block was unique in the sense that it was the gathering spot for the community. Families would sit on their balconies and watch their children play soccer in this field. They would watch their children walk to school in the mornings on this path. The divide of these 2 structures now is where Misha's home was, 4-bedroom home on the 2nd floor. This is someone's piano that's still sitting on the top floor that overlooks another building that was split by a Russian delayed detonation bomb. It took almost 2 months before Misha was able to recover his family. just a few meters across the river, Russians held that part of the bank, and the fighting prevented anyone from doing any type of recovery. There was constant artillery, constant fighting. The one thing to take away from this is that this was not a Ukrainian military infrastructure. There were no Ukrainian soldiers in this building on that day. No one had reported seeing any Ukrainian soldiers on their street that day. Misha was able to bury his 7 family members in their family plot. Unfortunately, the other 54 victims that were in that basement that died would all be buried in mass grave on the outskirts of the city. Every day, grave diggers would exhume bodies, all showing signs of torture and trauma. Graves were simply marked with numbers. These numbers were recorded in logs of Russian battalion commanders. And these logs, these books were hidden from anyone. So they didn't want to identify who was in what grave. Some of the residents would write their names on these crosses, but this is also in a forest that Russian soldiers used as a staging area for their tanks. So Russian soldiers lived meters from these bodies being buried. They would wake daily and they would eat their lunches, drink their vodka, smoke their cigarettes next to the very people they were killing. Russian soldiers also required citizens of Izum to bury their dead. Thank you.
Wow. So where do we go from here, Patrick? What's next for you? What's the timing on your book? All of that.
Book probably 6 to 8 months out.
And do you have a publisher or are you doing it yourself?
I do. Harvard Press is publishing it.
Wow, great, great.
I took Misha's story recently to DC, and it was exhibited for a week in Capitol Hill Rotunda, where unfortunately, I'm hopeful that it makes an impact, but I think it's more symbolic than anything that that Misha and his story can end up at our nation's capital when we have 2 groups of people arguing over funding. And it's also interesting to point out is that in 1991, when the fall of the Soviet Union, Ukraine became the 3rd largest nuclear arms holders in the world. And in 1994, with the Budapest Memorandum, it was an agreement that guaranteed Ukraine's protection as the border was in 1994. The 3 signatories of this agreement were the United States, Great Britain, and ironically, Russia. And so when we have bodies of government, especially in the United States, as one of the signatories, arguing that we shouldn't be funding Ukraine, we made a promise to them in 1994 that we would be there. And so if we choose not to continue funding for Ukraine, what does that say to our allies? But most importantly, what does that say to our adversaries?
Yeah. That that crystallizes it all right there. When, yeah. Uh, when do you plan on going back? Don't know.
I wish I had that. I wish I would had that answer.
Yeah. And going back to the book, I mean, how many images, how many pages? How are you editing it?
Um, I have many stacks of folders. Um, I have final images that I know that I will move forward with printing. Uh, Keith Carter's assistant's been really helpful. I think he's like on his 12th book, and so um, just some different techniques for printing test prints to make sure that when it does go to print, you're getting what you expect.
Okay. And you mentioned that you're going through some stress yourself. How are you dealing with that? Is there places to go for medical attention? Is it just wide open space that you need? What are you doing to help yourself?
I can't. I was seeing a therapist when I was in Ukraine, remotely in the United States, um, and it was helpful. And when I came back, um, I think I met with 5 different therapists, and after every session, after the first session, I would leave just saying, like, you got to be kidding me, like, um, just no connection, no, just wasn't the right fit. So I was able to find a therapist in Kyiv. Um, so now I'm doing remote therapy with a Ukrainian therapist who has um, at least an understanding of that shared trauma. Um, so there's certainly pieces from my childhood, but what I think I've found is that therapists here um, aren't able to connect in that way. Um, I guess that shared experience, and for me, that's important.
And do you have a network of colleagues, of other journalists that you can speak to? Because we find that, 'cause we go through this a lot with other photographers, that speaking to other journalists, that seems to help.
Yeah, I have a few. I have a close friend that's been helpful. A writer that I work with has been helpful. But when I went to Ukraine, I chose to detach myself from the press corps, and I didn't want to get caught up within that culture, and uh, and it's a very unique, specific culture that exists for not all, but for a lot of foreign journalists working in conflict and war zones. You could just walk into, a particular hotel in Kiev and sit and have breakfast or drink coffee in the morning, and you can just see it all go down every day.
Right.
Um, and so I chose to detach myself from working with other um, members of the media, uh, at least foreign journalists. I did work with some Ukrainian journalists and have connections with them. But I wanted to be with Ukrainians that were living in war, and um, I wanted to have kind of that shared experience to get a better understanding of what they were going through. That's why I lived in a Soviet era apartment block and not spending $400 on a night in a hotel. Um, and that's the other thing. There's so many other nice hotels in Kiev that you could spend $75 a night, but yet you know, CNN and Fox and MSNBC, they're going to sport the $400 rooms every
Mm,
single night.
right. Yeah, it's so yeah, listening to you, it really appears and it seems obvious. This has all had a profound effect on you, on so many levels. Yeah, I just want to read one or two of these little messages in the chat room. As a Ukrainian American, I cannot tell you how deeply moving it is to me that not only have you brought the world these images, but that you have taken such great care to accurately learn the history, the geography, the context. Thank you. That's from Anya. And from Linda, your photos speak volumes, so emotional, and your stories are so compassionate. My heart breaks. Thanks for bringing their story to us in your way. Really very moving images.
Дякую, Аня. Привіт, добрий вечір. Слава Україні.
That's for you, Anya. To not that's Christina. Sorry.
Sorry.
Um,
Thank,
that
thank you very much. I absolutely heartfelt. This was one of the, as many of these as I've seen, coupled with your, frankly, what comes across as deep love of the country and of the people. I don't recall being quite as moved. So thank you and best wishes to you.
Thank you.
there you have it. That's beautiful. So, certainly, William, we want you back. When the book is ready. I know there's many people here who want to see it, purchase it, on and on and on. So please, let me know when that's ready,
sure.
and we will.
And I will I got your last message and I think part of my my lack of responses to you was part of my self-healing and disconnect, just where I currently was at that particular moment in time. But I definitely either tonight or tomorrow morning I will share a Google Drive with the high-res files for you.
Okay, great. Yeah,
For sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Frank, it's Anya. I just wanted to echo Christina's comments, everything she said and then some, but I also wanted to respond to William, to his Slava Ukraini. I just want to say Heroyam Slava.
Slava Nazi.
I'm not going to say the last part because it's controversial, but you know how it goes.
Take care.
Okay.
Thanks, Anya, for checking in. So I again, I thank you so much, William, for doing this. And you have a standing invitation with us moving forward, and we want to know about the book. And for everyone else, we continue on tomorrow with Svet Jacqueline, and Friday we're on with Wolfgang Schwang and Katria Tomko. So hopefully, if you're available, please join us. Again, William, thank you very much. And I give you the last comment to send us off for the evening. It's all yours.
Try to have empathy in this world. Just, yeah, empathy. Just think about empathy every day.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.